coffee is a fruit. Coffee grows on trees, and coffee starts its life as a cherry. So a coffee bean isn't a bean at all. It's a seed, and it's a seed, and it's part of this ruby chai cherry, which grows on a tree. So coffee is a fruit as much as
I
a
didn't know
blueberry.
that. I've never really thought where coffee comes from.
Yeah, it's just how it's got
Right.
a bad reputation. People think of it as this dull, lifeless brown bean that makes this kind of black coffee, and it's
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
just colorless, no vibrancy, no life to it. But all I'm trying to say is, look, coffee is a fruit. Coffee comes from fruit.
First of all, though, if you introduce yourself and say who you are and about your coffee.
Yes, I'm Alex. The company is called Exhale Coffee, and we launched around 6 months ago in lockdown after a good 2 or 3 years of researching and developing and kind of building the idea for the business. And it's been a long old journey, but basically over the last few years, I've been reading more and more of the science around coffee, and more the studies are pointing towards coffee as being a superfood with lots of different health benefits. So it's been associated with the reduced risk of all sorts of different diseases. Okay, and because coffee is one of the most drank beverages in the world, it's also one of the most studied. So every decade, I think in the last 10 years, there's been over 8,000 studies on coffee and coffee and its implications on health alone.
Wow.
Because it's so widely drunk, people are really interested in how it affects your health, basically.
And does it matter when you say that? Is it coffee in its purest form, or coffee with milk, or because I drink black coffee. I don't actually like milk, but does it matter if it is in a latte or a cappuccino, coffee in general, however you have it?
So there are lots of mixed reports on that, and ultimately a lot of them are kind of biased towards whether people are trying to push one particular diet or another.
Yeah. Alpro milk or something like that. Yeah.
So I'm hoping to do some more testing this summer, looking at the implications of using different milks with coffees and how that affects its, say, antioxidant capacity and things like that. But yeah, I mean,
It doesn't really. Coffee is the coffee.
I think so long as you're not adding a load of sugar to it, I think milk's really. I think.
Damn. So what are the benefits then of drinking coffee?
Yeah, so coffee basically, there's been all of these studies over the last kind of however many decades. In the last 10 years or so, the studies have moved from kind of observational studies where they look for associations between drinking coffee and the risk of different contracting different diseases, and they started looking at kind of what mechanisms of action coffee could be having in the body, which could be causing these benefits. So in 2017, there was a study published by the British Medical Journal.
Right, yeah.
It was an umbrella review which looked at 218 meta-analyses, which covered pretty much every study that had been done on coffee up until that point. So in 2017, they looked at the sum of all of the research that had happened so far, and they made conclusions based on that. So they concluded, and they came up with a list of lots of different kind of diseases, lots of the worst diseases, and they concluded that coffee drinkers and I'll give you a few of the numbers. So the coffee drinkers are likely to have a 30% lower risk of contracting type 2 diabetes, 30%. Liver cancer was 50%. Parkinson's disease, 36%. Alzheimer's, 27% reduced risk. And this is a long list. There's like 6 different cancers on it.
So it's basically a super drink then to drink.
It is, and it's kind of it was unfairly given a bad reputation back in the kind of 50s and 60s with the really early studies in the really early scientific studies back then, which looked at the kind of epidemiological observational studies, and they look at, so they'll follow like a group of 100,000 people or 500,000 people over 10 years or 20 years, and they'll go, right, these people do this amount of exercise, they smoke or they don't smoke, they drink this amount of alcohol, they drink coffee, they don't drink coffee, and they look at these lifestyle factors and look at associations between the lifestyle factors and different risk disease. And they try and make connections between the two. So they concluded, and there's something called a healthy user bias. And the issue is that if you smoke, you're more likely to drink coffee and you're more likely to not exercise very much. And they kind of linked all these bad behaviors in together.
So it's all together.
Yeah, so coffee was unfairly tarnished with the bad brush of the association with smoking and drinking a lot of alcohol and things like that. So they didn't adjust for that back then. So it got a bad reputation 50 years ago.
But I think that's changing in every food now, because it's like eggs back then as well. You know, eggs had a bad rap, and now we know that eggs are really good for you. Because I know your coffee is very healthy and the health benefits. So your particular coffee, I know that, you know, you've named, I think on the packet, it's like having so many blueberries or something. What in particular, what is your coffee, so healthy?
So these epidemiological studies have moved in recent years to look at what the mechanistic cause of action of coffee having these perceived potential health benefits are. So what's causing the benefits? And the studies point towards a handful of different chemicals and compounds in coffee, which are most likely to be causing these benefits. And then in the last few years, they've been isolating some of these compounds out of coffee and then looking at them in kind of isolation to see whether it is those having the effect on coffee. So there's a handful of things. So polyphenols is probably one of the most well-known, and polyphenols is a plant-based phytochemical you get in all sorts of fruits and vegetables. And polyphenols, there's one in particular called chlorogenic acid, which is it's kind of the resveratrol of coffee. It's the most predominant polyphenol in coffee. And
what does that do?
And they basically, does
it make you 10 years younger?
Wow. So
actually, you say that I actually have had a friend did a coffee scrub.
Yeah, it's
my really
wife
good.
teaches me around the house with kind of coffee grinds mixed in with coconut oil. It's really good for skin.
Yeah, it's really, really good actually. Yeah, I was sort of like skeptical, but when I did it, you know, it really was good. So but I'm not going to waste your coffee on that. But
afterwards, after you've brewed it. So it's basically a way of recycling or reusing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it is. It's after you've used it. So
but anyway, basically the studies identify these certain compounds in coffee which could be causing the health benefits. We've gone through this whole sourcing and roasting process to find the coffee that's much higher in all of these healthy compounds. And then they also identify some potentially unhealthy compounds in coffee, and we make sure that we don't have any of the unhealthy ones either. So and then the study that you mentioned on the blueberries is probably our favorite lab test. So we did 9 different types of lab tests on our coffee, and the final one was the kind of icing on the cake. And I found a lab down in Plymouth, and Dr. Jan, who runs the lab down there, who invented this antioxidant test. I sent Dr. Jan a bag of my coffee, a grinder. I sent her instructions on how to exactly brew our coffee. I sent her a cafetiere down there, and she brewed a cup of our coffee. And she went to the local supermarket and she bought a bag of blueberries, a bag of oranges, and a bag of kale. And she tested the antioxidants in our coffee and in the blueberries, kale, and oranges. And she found that 1 cup of our coffee has the same antioxidant power as 12 punnets of blueberries, all in one brew.
Wow.
Or 1.2 kilos of kale or 55 oranges, all in 1 cup of our coffee. What I am trying to prove is that coffee has health benefits in the same league as fruits and vegetables. And should be enjoyed as part of a healthy lifestyle. And if you can't tolerate the caffeine and it makes you feel jittery or anxious or whatever, then decaf has pretty much the same health benefits.
Would you advocate just drinking coffee all through the day, or whatever suits the person?
I would advocate drinking coffee all day long, right up until bedtime, but you should choose a decaf after a certain time of the day. And it depends on your own personal genes. So it's actually all down to your genes. So You have a gene which dictates how fast you are at breaking down the coffee and caffeine, so metabolizing it, and then another gene which dictates how fast you are at absorbing the caffeine. So it's your combination of those two genes which dictate how long the caffeine will have an effect on your body. So some people like me, I'm actually a really slow caffeine metabolizer. So if I have a coffee after about lunchtime, I can't sleep at night. If I have caffeinated coffee. Whereas other people who are really fast metabolizers of caffeine can have a coffee just before bed and they'll burn off the caffeine really quickly and then they'll sleep. However, decaf really does have a lot of benefits as well. So in the afternoon, I switched to decaf, and then recently I've started having a decaf before bed, because there's a whole load of benefits around. So a lot of people are getting quite into fasting at the minute. Into the
5-8 or the 12-6,
all this kind of stuff, and basically the biggest reason to fast, the thing that's giving fasting all of these kind of health benefits, is something called autophagy, which is a Japanese scientist won a Nobel Prize for it, I think 5 or 6 years ago. And basically autophagy is your body's cellular cleansing mechanism, where your body goes into a catabolic state and it starts consuming the old dying cells in your body and cleans your body of all dead old cells, basically. And there has been studies which show that drinking coffee accelerates your body moving into autophagy, and that includes decaf. So if you have a decaf before bed, the theory is that your body will benefit even more from the overnight intermittent fast, basically.
But for me, it'll be sort of like almost a psychologist thing, though, because I think I'm drinking coffee. In my psyche, I'll be thinking it's going to wake me up. So I then have to, if I were to do that, I have to sort of like think, right, no, it's decaf. It's not going to have that effect.
We really start to look forward to it. It's kind of like because it's quite like a hot chocolate. It's like a chocolatey flavored coffee. It's like a hot chocolate coffee before bed. It's like the best of both worlds. It's like a combination of a hot chocolate and a coffee. And then you have it before bed, and it feels like the best kind of like pre-sleep guilty treat kind of thing that isn't a guilty treat.
Will we be able to do more planks? Will we be able to do more curl-ups? Does it, is it shown to enhance performance?
Oh, definitely. I mean, caffeine in particular is one of the few proven ergogenic aids to sport. Basically, it's one of the few legal ergogenic aids to sport. So there's a study, so that the international.
That means you can drink coffee before. So in the Olympics, they can drink a coffee beforehand, and that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, up until about I think it was like in the early 90s, up until about 15, 20 years ago, maybe, it was banned by the World Anti-Doping Association, had banned coffee or caffeine, but then they've made it legal more recently. But yeah, so basically the studies show that if you drink, there's quite a lot of coffee they recommend. It's between 3 and 6 milligrams of caffeine per kilo of body weight, which is probably about the equivalent of 2 double espressos to get the real benefit. But
I don't think my clients would allow me to have that.
No, exactly. But if you do that, there's a study which shows that so there's 2 separate meta-analyses which shows that caffeine increases exercise performance by 11 to 12% on average.
Wow.
So a pretty huge amount from the caffeine.
Now, I've heard, though, that you shouldn't pour boiling water on the coffee. Is that because I always do that? And then that was just in my head. Sometimes someone said that in the past. And should you do that or not?
So if you add boiling water to the coffee, it can scald the beans and it can over-extract some of the bitter flavour compounds in the coffee. So the advice we give is to boil the coffee, leave it 30 seconds off the boil, and then pour it. Right. However, you don't want to let it cool too much, because the extraction of all of the compounds and the healthy compounds, the polyphenol, the good stuff from coffee is a chemical reaction at the end of the day. And chemical reactions are all sped up by hotter temperatures. It's just a kind of standard law of chemistry, is that the hotter the temperature during a reaction, the faster it will take place.
Right, okay.
So if you let the water cool too much, then it's not going to be hot enough to extract the healthy compounds. So you want to let it cool just off the boil, but not too much.